Fellow Nigerians, good day, and thank you for listening in. I want to spend a little bit of time today to talk to you about the recent change that we've done in terms of the sale of PMS. And I know that a lot of you who watched the movement in price from 86.50 to 145 and scream where we headed. The reality is that at the prices we sold before, we were unable to continue to bring in these products, and that's why you've seen systemic queues all over the country, and it's gone on for a very long time. And I would urge you to trust that we're trying to do what is right. And there's no better time to do this than under the leadership of His Excellency President Buhari, whom at least we all know and believe is forthright, focused, and will apply whatever benefits come from this liberalization of the sale of PMS to development of the rest of the needy areas of the country. Now, why did we have to do this? First, when we came into position in August of last year, about 600 billion naira was being owed to petroleum marketers. So all of them basically seized importing products. And this money was being owed historically from before we came in. We worked very hard and got that paid sometime in November. But then so soon thereafter, there wasn't available enough FX for them to use. Indeed, there was no FX available at all for them to use to be able to import PMS. We struggled back and forth. Some individuals on their own, utilizing their own resources, did bring in products, but it was very insignificant and very marginal. So NNPC found itself moving from its traditional historical position of providing about 55% of the daily consumption for Nigerians to a point where it was now providing nearly 90% of that product flow. We struggled because different from providing the product, you had to create the logistics that was essential. You had to steer STSs from the vessels, take it to the depots, truck it out, about 1,600 truck deployment on a daily basis to different parts of the country. So we struggled with being able to fund the importation. We struggled with the logistics that was involved in having to harness this all over the country because most of the people who were active in this basically pulled out. But yet, we were pragmatic enough to say first we needed to address the subsidy problem so that we do not have it again. And I'm glad that we did, and effective January, we stopped payment of subsidy. But that was going to be dependent on the price modulation and our ability to continue to keep track of those prices. So for January to March, we had no subsidies because price modulation was able to enable us over-recover in such a way that there was no need for us to pay subsidy to anybody. But of course, by April, the problem worsened because at that point, there was a near dry-up of foreign exchange facilities for people to bring in products. So again, NNPC had to move in. But you see, for NNPC to do supply you products over and above the 50% that it has, it basically forward buys. It places other Federation crude at risk. And so the bubble was getting close to busting. So really, we did this. The main why we did is different from the fact of problem of foreign exchange, is that we're getting to a point where there was really no other alternative other than doing this. And that's still what it is today. If we continue with what we're doing today, by next month, governors won't be able to pay salary. Already, some of them are owing 3 or 4 months' salaries. So for each extra cargo of crude that you take from the governors from FARC, it means a salary that is not paid in one state or the other. For each extra cargo that you take, it means development that cannot take place. And for each extra cargo you take and each more product that you supply, it means marketers whose businesses were crumbling and, quite frankly, staff were being laid off. So we were in a very bad crisis mode. And that's why you saw that there was a systemic queue. We solve it because we are putting a lot of energy at it, a lot of solutions to it, but it comes right back. Because ultimately, the problem was supply. Supply won't happen unless you have the instruments of supply. So that is why we had to do this. Of course, you ask, why did you not have foreign exchange? Simple. Usually we produce 2.2 million barrels of oil. Technically, about 1 million barrels will go to us after the JV partners have taken their own share. And then from this 1 million barrels, the federal government will allocate 445,000 barrels to enable us either refine or import refined petroleum products. The rest is sold in international markets and money put into FARC. The difficulty, however, was that the 445, as we applied it, had to go to refineries. Refineries were not working when we came in, so we sold the crude. But as soon as refineries began to work, about 5 of those potential 14 cargoes that comprised 445,000 barrels were sent to the refinery. So you were left with a lot less to import product. Then, of course, there were historical obligations that have been incurred by the previous governments, which had not been paid, and those have been tied into the 445 scheme. So at the end, you had less of the 445 cargo than you even needed to deploy. But even if you had it all, it was meant to provide you only 55% of national consumption. So the reality was that you didn't have the barrels to throw at it. You didn't have the funding to throw at it. Federal government was bleeding massively and continues to bleed. Today, after the 2.2 million barrels, the production today is about 1.4, because militants and the attacks on production platforms have taken away literally about 800,000 barrels. So today it is even going to get worse. By the time we decided to take this decision, we were probably hovering about 1.8, 1.9. Today it's at 1.4. So obviously we need to do something in terms of recovering those barrels back. Once you do not have your barrels, foreign exchange does not come in. So your foreign exchange was depleting. And the question was, what would you do with the limited foreign exchange that you have? And the president made a very right choice, which was to leave what you have intact so that you do not run into a state of bankruptcy for the country. Once you've made that decision, and therefore that there was no foreign exchange to be able to allocate to the private sector to bring in PMS, the options were literally, quite frankly, next to nothing. The only option you had was to find a way of creating a liberalized trading environment so people can bring in their products, source their money from secondary market, charge at the right price, which they will not do unless the pricing was right. That is what we did. Fellow Nigerians, the reality was that we were left with no option than what we did. All of you know how opposed to a liberal or a privatization or model that the president is. And so you will know that this must have been a very difficult decision for him to take. If he had other options, he would not have. We had no option. Now, what do we expect from now? What we expect is that all these parties will get out, bring in their products, sell at the prices that we have. But you're going to see a lot of efficiency on the table. Never mind about the price now. If you watch what happened with diesel, with AGO, it started that way. Today, diesel prices are 40% down, and there's a supply of diesel all over the country. That will also happen with petrol. Because once Nigerians throw their skills, their trading skills at it, once competition becomes ripe, the prices will begin to tumble down. My guess is that in under 4, 5, maybe 6 months, you will see those prices begin to become more stable and definitely lower than the prices that you see today. But what this allows us to do is that each time there's a barrel movement or crude price movement, we can adjust to it through market fundamentals. The price modulation that we introduce will be used as a mechanism to try and guide the pricing, not to dictate, but to guide. Because ultimately the free market forces will force that dictate, will tell what the prices will be. And we believe that the competition inherent in the system will help us drive down the prices. Now, what is this going to help us achieve also? Refineries finally can begin to work. We've done a lot of work. We've been able to recover 2 of the pipelines leading to Warri and leading to Port Harcourt refineries. For the first time in about 10 years, we have the 3 refineries working at the same time, so that helps. But those refineries are working at 50% of their capacity. We expect to put in investments to get into 90% capacity. So, for the first time, you have a bit of money from the savings on NNPC's portion of this increase to be able to address some of these refineries in addition to loans from joint venture partners. For the first time, you can address the upgrades of depots that had all been dilapidated, 19 of them all over the country, only about 3 functional ones. For the first time, you can begin to look at how to replace pipelines, because our pipelines are about 35 years old. They're degraded, they're aged, they're out of use, largely. So it's been one massive problem after another massive problem, just trying to stabilize product supply in the country. But the time has come to take on the problem bullishly, and that is what we're trying to do. So we believe that there will be money for infrastructural development in the downstream sector. We believe that a lot of the private companies will jump up now, be able to sell at the right prices, not be hunkered down by the problems of price control, and be able to grow their businesses. We believe that the most efficient ones will drive prices southwards rather than northwards. And we believe that ultimately over 200,000 jobs, new jobs, will be created in this sector because of this liberalization. And over 400,000 jobs will be saved, which would have been lost had we continued on the path we're in. I urge you Nigerians not to give up. Do not be disillusioned. Forgive us if you feel pain by what we do. But you sent us to serve. And the day some of us who came from the private sector to work for you can no longer make the right decisions that will enable us to arrive at the right solutions for this country, then we have lost our mandate to be there. I assure you that we're doing the very best we can. I assure you that this was the only option open to us. I assure you that we're going to make sure that efficiencies return to help drive down prices. And I assure you that sooner or later, once this takes hold, you'll find a disappearance of the troublesome queues that you found all over Nigeria, something that was making everybody lose, translating the cost of purchase, the real cost of purchase of petroleum products to over 250 naira per litre. And the reality is that it was only in the areas of Lagos and some of the key cities, Lagos, Abuja, that you found people even attempting to buy product at 85 naira. The reality was that most parts of the hinterland, occupied by the poorest of our masses, were buying products at between 150 to 300 naira. That is key. And all we have done is to say there's no need to continue to run a subsidy regime that was creating a lot of problems for us. People have tended to give titles to this, deregulation, subsidy removal, whatever. I tend not to be caught up in those grammatical nomenclatures. What we try to do is apply basic common sense to enable us to survive for tomorrow. I thank you for listening, and I hope this answers a lot of your questions. Thank you.